Ibrahim Traoré had only 47 hours, 38 minutes, and 12 seconds left to live. He had just found a black envelope on his desk. Inside were only 4 words: 48 hours, leave or else. When his phone rang, he didn't recognize the number. "Did you find the envelope?" the voice asked. "I know who you are," Traoré said, "and I promise you, I'll still be here after 48 hours. The moment he hung up, a distant explosion sound echoed. The building across from the presidential palace was engulfed in flames. The ultimatum had begun. The morning had started like any other for Ibrahim Traoré. He had arrived at his office in the presidential palace of Ouagadougou at 5:30 a.m. before most of his staff. These early, quiet hours were when he did his best thinking, reviewing intelligence reports and planning policy initiatives without interruption. But today, something was different. The black envelope hadn't been there when he left his office last night. His security protocols were strict. No document reached his desk without being screened. Yet somehow this envelope had appeared, bypassing every layer of protection. As the flames from the explosion rose across the street, his office door burst open. Security Chief Ouedraogo rushed in, hand on his weapon. "Mr. President, are you all right? We need to move you to a secure location immediately." Traoré remained seated, studying the envelope on his desk. "Who was in my office last night, Emmanuel?" "No one, sir. The night logs show no entries after you left at 11:20 p.m. "Then we have a breach," Traoré said, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting outside. He held up the envelope. "Someone delivered this directly to my desk, and I believe they just detonated a bomb to emphasize their message." Ouedraogo's face hardened. "Let me see that, sir." "It's already been opened," Traoré replied, handing him the note with its 4 ominous words. The security chief scanned the message, his expression darkening. "This is a direct threat to your life, Mr. President. Protocol dictates immediate evacuation to the bunker." "No," Traoré said firmly, standing up. "That's exactly what they want. To disrupt governance, to show they can make me run and hide." He walked to the window, watching emergency vehicles arriving at the burning building. "Was anyone hurt in the explosion?" "Initial reports suggest the building was empty. It was scheduled for demolition next week." Traoré nodded. "A warning shot then. Precise. Calculated." He turned back to Ouedraogo. "I want a full security sweep of the palace. Check every camera, every log entry. Find out how that envelope reached my desk." As Ouedraogo left to carry out his orders, Traoré's private phone rang again. The same unknown number. "You're still there," the voice said. "Brave, but foolish." "What do you want?" Traoré asked. "I told you already. Leave Burkina Faso within 48 hours. Resign the presidency. Cross the border. Never return. Simple." "And if I refuse?" A cold laugh came through the speaker. "The building was empty today. Tomorrow, who knows? Perhaps your sister's school? Or your mother's nursing home? Or maybe something more. Nationally significant." The call ended before Traoré could respond. His official phone rang next. It was Foreign Minister Kabore. "Mr. President, I just received an urgent call from the French ambassador. He's requesting an emergency meeting with you this morning." Traoré's eyes narrowed. "Did he say why?" "Something about concerns for stability following the explosion." "How did he know I would be available?" "The explosion happened less than 10 minutes ago." There was a pause on the line. I don't know, sir. Tell him I'm busy managing a security situation. We can meet tomorrow." He looked at the digital clock on his wall. 5:47 a.m. Whatever game had begun, he now had 47 hours and 13 minutes to end it. And his first clue was the suspicious timing of the French ambassador's call. By 8:30 a.m., the presidential palace was in a controlled state of heightened security. Traoré had called an emergency meeting with his most trusted advisors: Security Chief Ouedraogo, Intelligence Director Amina Konaté, and Defense Minister Zongo. The security sweep found nothing, Ouedraogo reported. No unauthorized entries, no camera disruptions. Whoever delivered that envelope either has inside access or capabilities beyond our current security measures. The explosion was professional work, added Defense Minister Zongo. Remote detonated, precision charges. Minimal collateral damage, but maximum visibility. Intelligence Director Konaté, a sharp-minded woman who had risen quickly through Burkina Faso's reformed intelligence service, looked troubled. Sir, there's something else you should know. In the past 24 hours, unusual financial transactions have occurred. Several million euros moving through offshore accounts linked to 3 of your cabinet ministers. Traoré's expression remained neutral, but his mind was racing. Which ministers? Foreign Minister Kabore, Economy Minister Diallo, and surprisingly, Health Minister Sawadogo. The room fell silent. These were 3 of Traoré's most public-facing ministers, all involved in recent policy changes that had challenged Western interests in Burkina Faso. There's more, Konaté continued. We've detected increased encrypted communications between certain French diplomatic personnel and these accounts. Nothing explicit, but the timing is suspicious. Traoré stood and walked to the map of Burkina Faso displayed on his wall. His country, poor in resources by global standards but rich in the determination of its people, had been pushing back against decades of neocolonial control. Under his leadership, they had demanded renegotiation of exploitative mining contracts, expelled foreign military bases, and begun building regional alliances independent of Western approval. This is about the Chinese infrastructure deal, he said finally. We're scheduled to sign it this Friday, exactly 48 hours from now. The $5 billion infrastructure package would transform Burkina Faso's transportation and energy systems without the predatory terms Western institutions typically demanded. It would also significantly reduce French and American influence in the region. Sir, Ouedraogo said carefully, if this threat is connected to the Chinese deal, perhaps postponing the signing would be prudent until we can ensure your safety. Traoré turned to face him. That's exactly what they want. Delay, uncertainty, an appearance of weakness that they can exploit to collapse the agreement. His voice hardened. The signing will proceed as scheduled, but we will use these 48 hours to find who's behind this and neutralize the threat. As the meeting concluded, Traoré gave clear directives. Konaté would trace the financial transactions and communications. Zongo would quietly enhance security around key infrastructure and Traoré's family members. Ouedraogo would investigate potential inside sources of the security breach. Alone in his office afterward, Traoré checked his personal security protocols. He opened a hidden safe behind a painting of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary hero. Inside was a satellite phone not connected to any government system, a loaded handgun, and a flash drive containing evidence he had been gathering for months, evidence of foreign interference in Burkina Faso's affairs. His secure line rang. It was Amina Konaté. Sir, we've found something. The phone that called you. We've traced its last location to the French embassy. By midday, the first assassination attempt came. Traoré was heading to a scheduled meeting with military commanders when his convoy took an unexpected detour. Sir, there's been a change of plans, his driver announced. Security Chief Ouedraogo ordered we take you to the secondary command center. Traoré immediately sensed something was wrong. I wasn't informed of any change. The order came through just minutes ago, sir. Urgent protocol. Traoré studied the driver's face in the rearview mirror. This man had been with his security detail for over a year, but something in his demeanor felt off. Call Ouedraogo, Traoré ordered his personal security officer seated beside him. Confirm this change directly. The officer dialed, then frowned. No answer, sir. Try his secondary line. Another attempt, another failure to connect. Traoré made a split-second decision. Stop the vehicle. Now. Sir, my orders. I said stop! Traoré's voice carried the unmistakable authority of command. The driver hesitated, then pulled over on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, where the urban landscape began giving way to more isolated terrain. Where exactly is this secondary command center? Traoré demanded. Sir, it's the facility near the old mining complex, the driver replied, a bead of sweat now visible on his temple despite the air conditioning. Traoré knew immediately that was a lie. No such facility existed. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered the driver. Hands where I can see them. The standoff lasted only seconds. The driver reached for something under his seat, but Traoré's security officer was faster. A brief struggle ensued before the officer had the driver pinned to the ground. A search revealed a syringe filled with clear liquid and a satellite phone with just one number in its call log. Back at the palace, under intense interrogation, the driver broke quickly. He had been approached 3 days ago by a French businessman who offered him 50,000 euros to drive Traoré to a remote location where others would be waiting. He claimed not to know the ultimate plan, but the syringe's contents, later analyzed as a powerful sedative, suggested abduction rather than immediate assassination. They're trying to take me alive, Traore told his crisis team after reviewing the interrogation report. Why? Leverage, suggested Intelligence Director Konate. Force you to sign something under duress, make announcements they can record, or extract information about our defense systems. Or create a power vacuum they can fill with someone more cooperative, added Defense Minister Zongo. The clock on the wall showed 1:23 p.m. Less than 36 hours remained before the deadline. Traore's phone rang again, the same unknown number that was now confirmed to be linked to the French embassy. Impressive, said the voice. You're more cautious than we anticipated. Who is we? Traore asked, signaling Konate to try tracing the call. People concerned about the future of French-African relations. People who have invested a great deal in maintaining the proper balance of influence in the region. People who don't want us signing the Chinese infrastructure deal. A pause. Among other concerns, yes, that deal would be unfortunate for many long-standing arrangements. You mean your ability to extract our resources at fractional prices? Your military presence that serves your interests, not ours? The voice chuckled. Such idealism. Reminds me of Thomas Sankara. And we both remember what happened to him, don't we? The reference to Burkina Faso's beloved revolutionary leader who was assassinated in 1987, allegedly with French support, was unmistakably threatening. The world has changed, Traore replied. Africa has changed. Not as much as you think. 34 hours left, Mr. President. Use them wisely. That night, as Traore worked late in his office reviewing security protocols for the upcoming Chinese delegation's arrival, the palace lost power. Emergency generators failed to activate. In the sudden darkness, he heard footsteps approaching his office door. Drawing his personal weapon, Traore moved silently to a defensive position behind his desk. When the door opened, he was ready. A beam of light cut through the darkness. Mr. President? It was Ouedraogo's voice. Emmanuel? What's happening? Sir, we've been compromised. The entire security system is down. We need to move you now. Traore kept his weapon ready. The last time someone tried to move me today, it didn't end well for them. Ouedraogo's flashlight lowered, illuminating his own face to prove his identity. Sir, I understand your caution, but right now, at least 3 teams of unknown operatives have breached the palace perimeter. They're moving systematically through the building. We have perhaps 2 minutes before they reach this office. How do I know you're not part of this? Ouedraogo paused, then spoke quietly. When you appointed me, you showed me a picture of your father. You told me he died fighting for Burkina Faso's independence, and that I should remember his sacrifice if I ever faced a moment of weakness. It was a private conversation no imposter could have known about. Traore lowered his weapon. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't expect. The somewhere turned out to be the modest home of Security Chief Ouedraogo's grandmother in a quiet neighborhood of Ouagadougou. As Ouedraogo explained while they navigated back alleys and side streets to avoid detection, it was the one place not connected to any official record. What happened at the palace? Traore asked as Ouedraogo secured the doors and windows. Professional job. They cut power to the entire grid sector, then used electromagnetic pulse devices to disable our backup systems. Initial reports suggest they were European, possibly private military contractors rather than official operatives. Plausible deniability. Casualties? Ouedraogo's expression darkened. 2 of our guards. Clean shots. Professional work. Using Ouedraogo's secure tablet, they established an encrypted connection with Intelligence Director Konate. Her face appeared on the screen, tension evident in her expression. Mr. President, we've made several breakthroughs, she began. First, we've identified the financial sources behind the transactions to the 3 ministers. The money originated from shell companies linked to DGSE, French Foreign Intelligence. Are the ministers actively collaborating? Traore asked. It appears only Foreign Minister Kabore is a willing participant. The transactions to Diallo and Ouedraogo seem to be efforts to frame them, create division in your cabinet. Classic destabilization tactic, Ouedraogo muttered. Konate continued. Second, we've intercepted communications suggesting tomorrow's operation will be bigger. They're calling it Le Grand Finale, referring to targets across Ouagadougou. Terrorism, Traore said grimly. They'll create chaos, blame it on extremist groups, then offer French military assistance that will be in no position to refuse. Third, Konate said, and perhaps most importantly, we've identified the voice on the phone. She hesitated. It's Jean-Paul Mercier. The name hit Traore like a physical blow. Mercier had been his mentor at the French military academy, where Traore had trained as a young officer. They had remained in contact over the years, with Mercier offering advice during Traore's rise to power. He had trusted the man. You're certain? Voice analysis is 97% confident, and we've confirmed he arrived in Ouagadougou 3 days ago on a diplomatic passport. By dawn, they had devised a strategy. Rather than arresting Kabore immediately, they would feed him specific misinformation that Traore was planning to secretly leave the country, accepting the ultimatum's terms. This false intelligence would flow through Kabore to Mercier, potentially disrupting whatever operations were planned for the day. Meanwhile, Konate would continue investigating the planned grand finale attacks, while Defense Minister Zongo would quietly position loyal military units near critical infrastructure and civilian centers. As for the Chinese delegation scheduled to arrive that evening for tomorrow's signing, Traore made a bold decision. He would personally contact the Chinese ambassador and request that they proceed as planned, but with full awareness of the situation. "We will not be intimidated into abandoning this partnership," he told the ambassador via secure line. "But I cannot guarantee your delegation's safety with absolute certainty." The Chinese ambassador's response was measured. "President Traore, China respects Burkina Faso's sovereignty and your government's right to form partnerships without foreign interference. Our delegation will arrive as scheduled. We will face these threats together." By mid-morning, the misinformation planted with Foreign Minister Kabore appeared to be working. Surveillance on the minister showed him making urgent calls from a private phone. Intercepted fragments suggested he was reporting that Traore was preparing to flee, having secured promises of exile in a neighboring country. That small victory was short-lived. At 11:23 a.m., a series of explosions rocked downtown Ouagadougou. The central bank, the main hospital, and the national radio station all hit simultaneously with precision charges similar to the warning explosion from the previous day, but this time in crowded buildings. Traore watched the news footage in horror from his temporary command center. Initial casualty reports were coming in. At least 27 dead, over 100 injured. The hospital attack was particularly devastating, targeting the power systems and emergency room. His secure phone rang. Mercier again. "Still think you can win this game, Ibrahim?" The use of his first name, once a sign of mentorship and friendship, now felt like a mockery. "These are innocent civilians, Jean-Paul. This isn't a game." "It's always been a game. Global politics, resource control, spheres of influence, moves and counter-moves. You've played well, I'll grant you that. Better than we expected from a former colonial subject." The condescension fueled Traore's resolve. "You taught me strategy at the academy. Perhaps too well." "Not well enough, it seems. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate your attempt to feed false information through Kabore? He's been a French asset for years, but we don't trust him any more than you do." Traore maintained his composure. "What do you want, Jean-Paul? Really? You've killed innocent people. You've threatened my family. All to stop an infrastructure deal? The deal is merely a symptom. The disease is this notion that African nations can simply opt out of the established order, choose new partners, dictate terms." Mercier's voice hardened. "The Western consensus that has maintained stability in Africa for decades is non-negotiable." "Stability?" Traore couldn't contain his bitter laugh. "Is that what you call poverty, exploitation, and puppet governments? Call it what you will. It's the devil you know. The Chinese alternative won't end well for you. Ask the countries already drowning in Beijing's debt. But that's beside the point now. You have 18 hours left. Today was a demonstration. Tomorrow will be much worse unless you're on a plane out of Burkina Faso." The call ended. Traore looked up at his team. Ouedraogo, Konate, and Zongo had all heard the exchange via speakerphone. "He's desperate," Konate observed. "Escalating so quickly, risking international exposure. This goes beyond standard operations." "Because the stakes are higher than one infrastructure deal," Traore replied. "If we succeed, other African nations will follow. The entire post-colonial economic structure in West Africa could collapse. Defense Minister Zongo, a veteran soldier with traditional tribal scarification on his face, spoke up. "My father fought against the French for our independence. That battle was with guns and machetes. Today's battle is with financial instruments and political leverage, but it's the same war." He stood straighter. "I say we fight." Traore nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Then let's finish this. Not just for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa." As night fell on Ouagadougou, Traore finalized the most daring plan of his presidency. Rather than hiding or fleeing, he would directly confront Mercier. But first, they needed leverage. Intelligence Director Konaté had made a crucial discovery. By analyzing patterns in the attacks and communications, she had identified the likely location for tomorrow's main operation, a massive bombing at the infrastructure deal signing ceremony, designed to kill both Traore and the Chinese delegation, creating an international crisis that would destabilize the region for years. "The explosives are likely already in place at the convention center," she explained. "They'll have redundant detonation systems, probably remote-controlled with backup timers." "Can we disarm them without alerting Mercier's team?" Traore asked. "Not all of them, not in time. But we can gather enough evidence to prove French involvement. That's our leverage." The plan that emerged was dangerous, but potentially decisive. Traore would seem to accept the ultimatum, requesting a final meeting with Mercier to negotiate terms of transition. This meeting would take place at the convention center, the very location Mercier had rigged to explode. Meanwhile, a specialized team would infiltrate the site, document the explosives, and trace them back to their source. With this evidence, Burkina Faso could expose the operation internationally before Mercier could execute it. The most dangerous role would be Traore's. He would need to keep Mercier distracted and talking until the evidence was secured. He drafted a letter detailing everything they had uncovered, naming names and providing evidence of French involvement in the assassination attempts and bombings. Copies were encrypted and scheduled for automatic release to international media and African leaders if he didn't enter a cancellation code by dawn. At 10:15 p.m., Traore made the call to Mercier. "I want to discuss terms," he said without preamble. Mercier sounded surprised but pleased. "A wise decision, Ibrahim, though rather late in the process. I have conditions. Face-to-face meeting, just you and me. I won't be humiliated by subordinates." "Understandable. When and where?" "The convention center. Midnight." A pause. "What is the signing venue?" "That's unexpected. Symbolic, don't you think? The place where I was meant to change Burkina Faso's future will instead be where I surrender it." Mercier agreed, though Traore detected hesitation in his voice. The choice of location had unsettled him. Exactly as intended. Inside the cavernous main hall where tomorrow's signing ceremony was to take place, Jean-Paul Mercier waited. He stood alone in the center of the room, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit despite the late hour. The man who had once been Traore's mentor now stood as his would-be executioner. "Ibrahim," Mercier greeted him with the false warmth of a predator. "I'm pleased you've come to your senses." Traore approached slowly, conscious of the hidden explosives surrounding them and the evidence-gathering team working somewhere in the building's shadows. "Before we discuss my departure, I want to understand something," Traore said, keeping his voice conversational. "Why this way? Why terrorism against civilians? That crosses a line even for colonial powers." Mercier shrugged. "Precision strikes against empty buildings weren't motivating you quickly enough. We needed to accelerate your decision-making process by murdering my people. Collateral damage in service of regional stability. Don't be naive, Ibrahim. Your Western education taught you how this works." As they talked, Traore received a silent vibration from his secure phone, the signal that Konaté's team had completed their evidence collection. Now, he needed to ensure their safe extraction before confronting Mercier with what they knew. "There's one thing I still don't understand," Traore said. "Why would France risk international exposure and condemnation? These operations aren't exactly subtle." Mercier laughed. "Because we know the rules of the game. A strongly worded denial, some diplomatic reshuffling, perhaps a sacrificial mid-level official or two. Meanwhile, Africa returns to its proper role in the global order." Traore received another vibration. The team was clear of the building. It was time. "I'm not leaving, Jean-Paul." Mercier's expression hardened. "Don't be foolish. You've seen what we're capable of. Tomorrow will be worse if you stay." "You mean the explosives you've planted in this very building?" Intended to kill me, the Chinese delegation, and probably dozens of my staff? A flicker of surprise crossed Mercier's face before he controlled it. I don't know what you're talking about. Traoré held up his phone, displaying images of the explosive devices Konaté's team had documented. C4 explosives with French military serial numbers. Detonators traced to a DGSE facility in Paris. All planted around a venue for a diplomatic signing ceremony. He took a step closer to Mercier. That's not intelligence work, Jean-Paul. That's terrorism and war crimes. Mercier's composure cracked slightly. You're bluffing. Those could be manufactured evidence? Perhaps. But in approximately 5 hours, every major news outlet in the world will receive this evidence, along with intercepted communications, financial transfers, and your voice recordings threatening me and taking credit for attacks on civilians. Now, Mercier looked genuinely alarmed. You wouldn't dare. The diplomatic fallout would be catastrophic for France, Traoré finished for him. Sanctions, international isolation, investigations into decades of similar operations across Africa, the end of French influence in the region. Mercier's hand moved toward his jacket, where Traoré suspected he carried a weapon. I could kill you right now. And the evidence still releases at dawn. My death changes nothing except adding one more crime to the list. For several tense seconds, they stared at each other. Student and mentor, African leader and colonial agent, New World and Old Order. Then Mercier did something unexpected. He laughed. Well played, Ibrahim. I underestimated you after all. He moved his hand away from his jacket. So what now? A public arrest? An international tribunal? Now we negotiate. For real this time. By dawn, a new reality had taken shape. Under the threat of catastrophic exposure, Mercier had contacted his superiors in Paris. Emergency diplomatic channels opened. The French president himself was awakened to address the crisis. The terms Traoré demanded were non-negotiable. Immediate withdrawal of all operatives from Burkina Faso, formal recognition of Burkina Faso's right to form partnerships with any nation, reparations for the bombing victims, and a public acknowledgement of inappropriate intervention, though carefully worded to allow France to save some face. In return, the most damning evidence would remain sealed, not destroyed, but held as insurance against future interference. As sunrise painted the Ouagadougou skyline in gold and crimson, Ibrahim Traoré stood at the window of the presidential palace, now secured and restored to full operation. In a few hours, he would welcome the Chinese delegation and proceed with the infrastructure deal signing as planned. Defense Minister Zongo approached, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. Sir, French diplomatic staff are already preparing to leave. Their intelligence operatives withdrew during the night. And Mercier? Under house arrest in the French embassy, awaiting transportation out of the country. Intelligence Director Konaté joined them, tablet in hand. Mr. President, you should see this. She showed him a news report already breaking on international channels. France announces strategic realignment in West Africa, the headline read, followed by diplomatic language about respecting sovereignty and evolving partnerships. They're trying to get ahead of the story, Konaté observed, spinning their retreat as a policy change rather than a forced withdrawal. Let them, Traoré said. The reality matters more than the narrative. Traoré looked at his 3 loyal advisors, the team that had helped him survive the 48-hour ultimatum and change Burkina Faso's future. What we've done goes beyond one infrastructure deal or one confrontation with France. We've established a precedent that will resonate across Africa. Defense Minister Zongo nodded solemnly. Our brothers and sisters in other nations will take heart from this. The message is clear. Africa can stand firm. But we should expect more subtle forms of pressure, cautioned Konaté. Economic maneuvering, proxy conflicts, information warfare. This is just the beginning of a longer struggle. A struggle worth fighting, Traoré said, watching the sun rise fully over his capital city. For too long, African nations have been told we must choose between stability and sovereignty, between development and dignity. Today, we prove that false dichotomy wrong. The signing ceremony that afternoon was more than a diplomatic formality. It was a declaration of a new era. International media crowded the convention center, drawn by rumors of the dramatic events that had unfolded behind the scenes. Ibrahim Traoré entered the hall to thunderous applause from assembled officials and citizens. If he appeared slightly more tired than usual, his resolve and dignity remained undiminished. As cameras flashed and the world watched, he and the Chinese ambassador signed the historic $5 billion infrastructure agreement. In his address afterward, Traoré spoke not of the ultimatum or the attempts on his life, but of the future being built. Today marks not just a partnership between Burkina Faso and China, but a statement about Africa's right to self-determination. We choose our own allies, we negotiate our own terms, we build our own future. In the days that followed, the full scope of the French operation became clearer. Several other Western African leaders received intelligence briefings from Burkina Faso detailing similar pressure tactics used against their governments. This shared knowledge created a new solidarity among nations previously played against each other by colonial interests. 3 months later, a regional summit in Ouagadougou brought together leaders from across West Africa to establish new protocols for collective security and economic cooperation. The Ouagadougou Principles, as they came to be known, explicitly rejected foreign interference in sovereign decisions while promoting inter-African partnerships. The infrastructure projects funded by the Chinese deal began transforming Burkina Faso within a year. New highways connecting previously isolated regions, solar farms bringing electricity to rural communities, modern hospitals and schools replacing crumbling colonial-era facilities. One evening, a year after the ultimatum, Traoré visited the memorial erected for the 27 civilians killed in the bombings. Simple but dignified, it stood in a quiet park in central Ouagadougou. As he laid flowers at the base of the monument, an elderly woman approached him. "My grandson died in the hospital bombing," she said without preamble. He was a doctor, just starting his career. Traoré bowed his head, feeling anew the weight of those losses. "I am deeply sorry for your loss, mother." The woman studied his face. "They tried to use our pain to control you, to control Burkina Faso. But you didn't let them." She placed her weathered hand on his arm. "My grandson would be proud of what you've built with your stubbornness." Later that night, in his office, Traoré received a message from Jean-Paul Mercier, now living in quiet retirement in southern France following his diplomatic reassignment. It was brief, but revealing. "You've changed the game, Ibrahim. Others are learning from you. Watch your back. Not everyone accepts new rules so quickly." Standing at his office window, looking out at the capital city now illuminated by reliable electricity rather than intermittent generators, seeing construction cranes on the horizon where new infrastructure rose, Ibrahim Traoré knew one thing with certainty. The clock was no longer counting down. Now it was counting forward, measuring not hours until surrender, but years of hard-won sovereignty and the gradual fulfillment of Africa's long-deferred promise. The black envelope that had started it all remained in his desk drawer, a reminder of how quickly everything could have been lost and how resolutely it had been defended instead.